kindness, imagination, sharing, and generosity. And we watched a hidden arsenal of talent emerge. And I'm so inspired, and I'm so excited to hear what everyone thinks about it, and to hear your questions, and to hear the artists' answers to your questions about what do we take from this time where our city has more art than ever, but might lose it, you know, soon, and how do we keep it going? So I also just want to plug a few things. There is a map by Stronghold Seattle that features some of the artists that are talking tonight, all their art that's still up. So if you want to take a self-guided tour or bike, bike around the city or walk around your neighborhood, Stronghold Seattle has a map of the art that's still up. And then also there's a slideshow of a lot of the murals featured at MoPOP for the next few weeks. So if you're in the area and want to check it out, it's definitely worth seeing. And also just a reminder, please send questions through the chat. I will be curating them and picking the ones that I think that will elicit the most interesting responses. But I also do encourage you to reach out to each artist individually after you hear them speak, if you want to know things like their favorite paintbrush or their morning routine or whatever. But we'll skip those for this panel. But I'm sure they'd love to hear from you with those little questions later. So I will now introduce our first speaker, Seth Geiser, who is a friend and a fellow facilitator of the Plywood Palace, or Kingdom, I don't know what you said, but you coined the term. Seth fielded no less than 680 emails from my business partner, Lena, and myself over the last few months, and not one harebrained idea or like wall request or email got unanswered. So thank you, Seth, for your generosity and your time and your humor during it all. I really appreciate you, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one that feels that way. So I will let you take it from here.
Well, thanks. That's quite the intro. Yeah, I'm really just honored to be here. My name's Seth Geiser. I work for the Downtown Seattle Association. I'm ostensibly the manager of urban planning and design there. But sort of as the year has shifted and evolved, this has become a pretty significant sort of part of my workload and kind of personal life. And it's just been an honor to be sort of tangentially associated with some of the amazing stuff that's sort of come out of the Seattle community this year. And so, yeah, for my part, if 2020 has been anything for you, like it's been for me, the idea of time is sort of very amorphous and squishy. And so I wanted just to give sort of a shared timeline that will help sort of give a context of where all of the sort of the art that the panel is going to be talking tonight, sort of what they were responding to, the conditions they were working in, and then also just it'll lead into some questions about sort of where we go from here. So yeah, we start in early 2020 when life, as far as we could tell, was fairly normal. Things were proceeding sort of well. We were getting through the winter, and then suddenly news started to sort of trickle in. People, like the idea of COVID was filtering up through the news, and then I think it dawned on everybody that, you know, this is probably going to make it to our shores. And then suddenly, bam, like everything sort of in a moment changed, it felt like. And as we all got up to speed, and then the state really sort of locked in restrictions, there was kind of an immediate sort of response on the business community side. Initially, there were some kind of break-ins. I think there was a decent number of sort of robberies, particularly at bars. And then as sort of word got around that was something people needed to be concerned about, and then as it was starting to filter into people's minds that, you know, this is going to be a thing that we're going to be in for a while, there was sort of that initial glut in basically every business district across the city of plywood boards popping up over windows. And I sort of personally, the feeling, but also we heard just from lots of folks in the community that it's a really dire aesthetic to have to live around, right? It really evokes images of like people prepping for like a hurricane that's coming, except this hurricane, you know, is lasting. At that time, we thought maybe a couple months, but now who knows? And so that's when we started to see some of the initial murals pop up. And largely they happened organically. It was business owners who, through their own informal networks, reached out to artists that they knew and made some murals happen. There were also some business owners who maybe they didn't have the resources to pay for it, but made it known that they wanted something on their walls. And so artists just kind of own their own sort of free will and interest, just started populating these spaces. And that really was sort of, yeah, March, April, early May was kind of that really loose, informal, just scattering of these across the city. That was around the time that sort of DSA started hearing a lot more about it. And sort of my colleagues at other sort of business improvement districts around the city were getting wind from their business owners that kind of the low-hanging fruit, or like the easy mural opportunities, had sort of happened. And what we were left with was a lot of really challenging circumstances. So this was buildings with tricky configurations, ones where the owners were just completely overwhelmed and didn't have any capacity to try to coordinate this. Ones with absentee owners, and so graffiti just started to happen everywhere. And then other ones too, where folks just needed help with connections. There isn't really a white pages for local muralists. And so in that case, what they needed was just help. Who do I call? Who do I connect with? What Instagram should I follow? And so that was kind of the second wave that really came in. And that's where organizations like mine, but other ones around the city, started to weigh in. We helped coordinate. It's getting close to 20 now. Folks like Pioneer Square, they were up in the 50s. There was a day in, I think it was June or July, where the International District had like over 100 artists show up over a weekend. So really, once that organizational weight started kicking in, we started seeing a lot more kind of established support for COVID response. And at that time, it sort of felt like we were easing into not a new normal, but kind of like there was a degree of predictability sort of entering again. And that's when suddenly May happened, and again, everything sort of like flipped on its head. And we all collectively shifted to responding to a problem that's, you know, been with us for far longer than COVID has. And yeah, the protests that spilled out of the movement really, again, sort of shook up the mindsets of the city. And suddenly there was this new, not new, but suddenly very vibrant and pressing and urgent response that the artistic community quickly pivoted to. And you're gonna hear from like Mari later, who we were working with and like in real time shifted like hard from COVID to BLM. And we saw that pretty frequently across the city as, you know, this really took hold. It was at the same time that we saw Chop and Chaz pop up in Capitol Hill, and this sort of other form of mural art that came in with much more free form. We saw murals based out of mutual aid networks, and we saw kind of more collaborative works really come into the fore. It was a time too that in response to the protests, business owners got very leery of their windows being smashed. And so there was a point where I counted the boards in a 24 block area of downtown, and in square footage, there was over an acre's worth. So it was just this incredible sea of boards that suddenly, you know, needed coverage. And it was, you know, the same concern that there was in early April. Now suddenly it's June and we've got even more. As we've proceeded into the summer months and some of the relaxations of the COVID rules have kicked in, we're now starting to see boards come down, which is its own interesting conundrum of how do you conduct art preservation in real time on a rolling, ongoing basis. We're finding that it's an interesting challenge, and models are starting to have to shift to make sure that, you know, these really poignant of the community pieces of art don't end up in the landfill. And it's its own unique challenge of how do you store a 4 foot by 8 foot board. It's not really a size of art we're kind of used to handling necessarily. And so, yeah, where we stand now is this odd tipping point moment where businesses are trying to figure out if they can shift their business model to stay open, if they're going to just try to weather this out, if they're going to close up shop for 2020. or if they're going to close altogether. And yeah, we just got report of the 100th business in downtown that closed permanently. And I'm sure you've all seen similar closures in your neighborhoods. Like, we're still under the crunch and people are feeling it hard. And so from my perspective, I don't see sort of the need for the community response for muraling going anywhere anytime soon. And so I think my takeaway from all of this is that in times of need, the Seattle artistic community, like, they show up, and they show up in force. And so my hope is that as we try to scramble towards a sense of normalcy, hopefully it's a better one, and it's one that more actively affirms all of the things that these artists have been displaying and communicating. It's one where we work towards equity, not just in words, but in actions. It's ones where we try to reconcile with our past and forge a better path. And it's one where we just take care of each other in big ways and in small ways. And one of those small ways that's like my secret hope from all the work that I've been participating in is that as these sort of temporary murals come down, that permanent ones go up in their place, and we move towards a city that's full of color and compassion and just the outpouring that we've seen this year, but just always. And so with that, I'll leave it to the artists to talk about their work.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, so I am going to introduce the artists. We have 5. They're each allotted 10 minutes. They may take a little less or a little more, but the first artist is Kalee. And I met Kalee because she enthusiastically reached out to me about painting a mural. She painted her first mural ever during COVID times. Although she'd been working on canvas in a large scale, this was her first time ever painting like a public mural, which is a perfect example of like how this time has opened up space for people who have not been given those opportunities, been bold enough to take an opportunity with a client that, you know, is scary, or, you know, there's so many ways that it can go wrong. And during this time, you can just try, fail, succeed, whatever. And Kalee became very quickly a little darling of this whole movement, which I love. And so I was grateful to be able to hook her up with a wall on Broadway Market. Her first mural was on castles, and she did many more after that. So I'm really proud of her and to see where she goes with all of this. But I wanted to read a summarized version of how she explains her art, which is morbidly whimsical images inspired by the unsettling madness of the expansive world, which I thought was just perfect for this year. So thank you, Kalee, for all of your hard work, and you can show your slides now.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Thank you, Kathleen. Hi, everyone. I'm Kalee. This has been just a crazy time as an artist. I've moved to Seattle about 4 years ago, and that's really when I started doing art. And yeah, slowly have been doing large scale, but this is obviously the largest that I've done. And I feel really just overwhelmed with the opportunities that have arisen from it. And a little bit of background about my art, just because I do have like some common themes that keep popping up. I do like a lot of sun and moon stuff, and it really started when I was doing this like really long backpacking trip and just kind of got stuck on, I started to get bored, and I started trying to like imagine things dripping and like the world, like different colors swirling, and the sun and the moon, like when they're both in the sky and you're like in the middle of a mountain, and just like trying to make up this kind of dream world just to keep myself entertained, and also just trying to perceive life differently and just trying to understand and make sense. And it slowly rolled out into this time, which I think is kind of perfect considering changing your perception, I think, of what has happened and what is happening is necessary for all of us. So yeah, this is my first mural that I did. I can't wait to dance with you. A lot of my art, I do a lot of like wordplay too. I love to write. And I just thought that it was like such a beautiful sentiment, just because I think the beginning of COVID, we're just so focused, especially me, on like, I'm never gonna see my friends again, and kind of getting my brain to think in like, you know, alternative ways of like, okay, what can't I wait to do until like when I like see my best friend again, or like what am I excited about, even though it's like a pretty dark time right now. So yeah, it's just, and yeah, just a special sentiment for me, and especially my close friends that I just miss like dancing like crazy with. So yeah, and this is just an image that I kind of, the sun and the moon, just kind of a common theme of my art. Lisa, if you want to go next. Next. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and a lot of my writing, I really love wordplay, and I like really love to do, you can go back to, I love to do like the middle of a story. Yeah, the one above it, actually. Or the one, the previous one. Yeah, that one. Cool, thank you. Yeah, I love doing a lot of wordplay with my writing, and a lot of like patterns and different shapes and stuff. And I really wanted something that would like captivate the person, or like whoever was walking by. And I just really like to do stuff that kind of gives your brain like a moment to just relax. And it looks really small on the screen, but in person it's really big. And I think it like really takes a minute to take it all in. And I don't know, the middle of the story thing is like, for me, you know, especially, I don't know like where we're going and what people's lives have been like before COVID, but like kind of here in this moment, we're all in this together, and just like giving people a second to like take a step back and like really take it in, and just know that like, you know, not getting stuck on the past, or like even in this moment, if it feels hard for you, but just knowing that like, you know, there's always opportunity, and the future is gonna keep moving forward. And yeah, just giving people a chance to just get out of their heads for even just a moment. So this one was really special to me. Yeah, if you want to go next, Lisa. This was my first one from Overall Creative. Thank you, Kathleen. Oh, the dreaming is the part of the process one, if you want to go on that one. Yeah. Yeah, this is my first one from Overall Creative, on the side of Urban Outfitters. Same thing, I just really like to do a lot of patterns, and just like, I don't know, give yourself a second to like kind of take everything in. Yeah, this was kind of like when COVID, I think, like started to settle down for me, of just like, you know, realizing new normal, or whatever you want to call it, of just like recognizing that it's okay to slow down. I'm sure a lot of you guys can also relate, of just like being someone who's constantly trying to fill my time up. And yeah, this was just like, I just started to realize like, okay, like there's a moment where we can like settle down and like dream about if this is your time to relax, like how can you relax into your future, and like what do you want from it? And it was just a big time for me personally to kind of like reflect on that, and hope that everyone else is reflecting as well. Yeah, Lisa, if you want to go next. This one was on the side of the Baltic room. I really love the multiple panels of this. This is really fun for me to be challenged. This, I decided not to do words and to tell more of a story. And for me, the story is, and I love that art is, you know, it can be whatever story you want it to be. But for me, it's kind of this chance where, I don't know, I feel like COVID and just like the Black Lives Matter movement, and just, you know, life, how it is, it's like, we feel like all these like small steps are happening, and like you know, it's like so hard to see the bigger picture, see this drastic change. But I do think like this time for us is like this huge chance for all of us to be in the same spot with our consciousness, and just like we're all in the same bubble. And you know, it's like the first time in my life, and in probably a lot of people's lives, where we're just like all in the same kind of like energy wave. And I just think like life is actually moving so fast. It might feel so slow because of, you know, we haven't left our houses or whatever, but I think like if you take a second to like reach back out on a large scale, things are happening at such a rapid speed, and change I really think is. And that's kind of what I wanted to go with this, where the last panel, it's like, you know, it's like slowly like changing, but in the last panel, you're just like, holy crap, like life is happening, and can be completely different in a split moment, you know. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Lisa. This is, these are lyrics from this really brilliant Black artist. His artist's name is Black Party, but his actual name is Mclean. And the lyrics are, I hope you know you're the world, you are so special to me. I hope you grow up to be even kinder than me. I hope you get to see all of the world from mountain to seas. I hope you reach all of your dreams. I hope that that's what you need. And the whole song is called Bloom. And this was like at probably the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement in Seattle. And also at the same time, my sister is graduating high school, and she has had so many questions because she lives in Rhode Island back home. And, you know, it's so funny to talk to a high schooler, and I've taught high school before, and just like having this, like, you know, they have like so much, this brilliant hopefulness, but also this like naivety. And talking to her just made me remember just like how much potential our future has when we have like inquisitive young people. And I'm just, yeah, it was just a really reflective moment of the change that I think we will see as long as we keep teaching and growing, and knowing that things can be different. Yeah, and if you want to go to the next slide. And this is my last slide, also thanks to Overall Creative. This is on vinyl instead of plywood, and which my paintbrushes loved it a lot more than the plywood. Yeah, this was my most recent one and my last one. Just me personally, I've been reflecting a lot about how, you know, the relationships that I have since COVID, you know, I think we're going on month 5, and all my relationships of personally, the ones that really matter, have gotten so much closer, and quite a lot of them have also fallen by the wayside. And I just think, you know, if you see around you who is, you know, in your bubble, and like what you've been able to learn from each other. Me and my roommates are very close now, and even though we got on each other's nerves, I could not have done the last 5 months without them. So it's just a reminder that, like, yeah, it's always better when you got good people around you, and I feel very grateful. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Overall Creative, especially. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, MoPOP. Yeah, it's been an incredible pleasure to just have this opportunity. I've been painting on these wood panels that are 4 by 5 feet for the past 1.5 years, and have really wanted to do mural work and had no idea where to start. And it feels kind of like crazy that all of a sudden there's so many opportunities, and I'm just so happy and grateful for all the friendships that I've made through this work. I've been in the art scene for a little bit, but like so many new faces, and it's just been such a pleasure to work side by side and get that fresh air and leave the house. And just like, yeah, it feels like a really crazy time, and but I'm really happy and grateful to be moving through it with a lot of creative minds. So thank you guys.
All right. Thank you, Kalee. I feel like big things are in store for you. So I think that you're a perfect example of what happened during this time is a launching pad for so many people who just like didn't know how to start their mural career. So it's super cool. Thank you for sharing. So next artist is Dozfy. who just had a baby like yesterday or 2 days ago. So it's like everyone thank
you.
The Lord that he's here. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
He's going to step away for like 2 seconds to feed the baby and come back for the Q&A. So have some good questions ready. I first learned about Dozfy from a friend who owns a restaurant who sent me a picture of a menu that he had doodled on. And then when I was researching him, I saw an article that called him the Banksy of menus, which I thought was amazing. So if you have a moment to Google his restaurant work, please do. But also, I think he's a really cool example of the pivot from one thing to another that has happened. Like he took smaller scale restaurant designs and menu doodles to like large scale murals. And in my mind, I feel like you've done the most murals of anyone in the city during this time, but I am not counting. I don't know, it just feels that way. And also I respect that you're from Texas and Atlanta, fellow Southerner here. So I'm stoked to get to know you more and grateful for all that you've contributed to the city. So I'll let you share your story. I hope I did not botch it.
Oh, you did great. Thank you. I'll say y'all for the Southern roots.
Yeah, thanks.
So hello, my name is Patrick Nguyen. I'm the artist behind the Dozfy team. There's a group that makes this possible. I'm honored to represent Dozfy at the Seattle Design Panel amongst all these amazing artists. And I also want to thank Overall Creative Downtown Seattle Association, MoPOP, and Stronghold Seattle. So on this first slide, just to give you a little background about us, which Kathleen just covered really well, is we work closely with the restaurants and the hospitality industry and work closely with their respective communities. And really how we created this bridge 5 years ago in Seattle was these menu arts where we would go in and I would literally doodle, like you said, on the menus, all inspired from either the food or the environment at the restaurants. I really clicked with the team and community and the chefs there. So that really allowed us to understand all these pocket of communities through the restaurants. So the first slide and the next slide are something that the restaurants had asked us to create, something for hope. And so this one is from Watson Counter, which is a restaurant in Seattle. The previous one was Musang, which is, you know, kind of First Hills, Central, all the way down the River Valley, which community you define that as, especially in the Filipino community. And they wanted something that bring people together. So that's why the first phrase was better together, but that transformed to stay strong. And the reason behind that is as the businesses were closing, as people were quarantined, not only the medical burden, but the psychological, the physical, everything was combining. And so knowing that together we could get through this as a community, and community I mean like just in Seattle, but the nation, the world, resonated with us. We did the heart just to show love and support. And then the Space Needle, iconic for Seattle, but also acted like a beacon of hope. So that covers those two slides of how our menu art kind of fed to what would become a very powerful image when we did some of those for the board murals. And so the next slide, which is the Belltown video, will kind of give you a glimpse of how we got introduced to making murals.
Oh. Lost it.
No worries.
Lisa?
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. I'm gonna just add it right now.
So the initial reason we boarded up was just to prevent looting and vandalism to the restaurant, so we were protecting our assets. We put up the boarding, it was good for about 48 hours. Then the unauthorized tagging, if you will, took place, and instead of like getting pissed off about it, I just decided to put a post on social media to see if I could locate local artists that would be interested in covering up something and making it a little bit more attractive. And I had over 200 artists in my inbox asking what they could do, when they could do it, how quickly could they come down. And so we filled up all of my spaces. I tried to break it down with as many artist placements as possible. So we ended up with about 11 different artists on this restaurant alone. And then I still had more artists contacting me. And so I started reaching out to other restaurant owners. And they were also interested in not just having boards up, but having artwork for the neighborhood to enjoy. And so as we fill the restaurant, we move to the next one now, and I'm kind of taking over, I guess, a small collective of artists on creating artwork in this kind of dark time with positivity for the community to enjoy.
Perfect. And so the next video is for Heartwood Provisions. It's a 15-second time lapse of kind of the process of how we go about creating these murals. So the restaurant's called Heartwood Provisions. We literally are playing off the name Heartwood. So we had to do anatomical heart, which is fun for me because it goes back to my medical illustration days. And then intertwined a tree branch, which acts like the arteries and veins from the heart. So play on the name of the restaurant. So the last slide, actually the second to last slide, is going to be the mural that we did with Shara Lee. She goes by Shara Paints on Instagram. It was her first time muralist. And this was during the Central International District beautification. And so it's a mural of Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And this was actually kind of hits home and the mural hits many themes that runs through the Asian community. It's Asian restaurant in one of the older in the National District. It's one of the older ones. Bruce Lee actually went there, ate there a lot when he was at UW. And the conversation we had to put some type of mural on the boards was kind of crucial, because as a business owner, he supported the Black Lives protest, but didn't know how to show support. And after that conversation, he mentioned his fond memories of Bruce Lee and how Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, how they both brought communities together, especially in their movie called Game of Death. And we thought, well, we should make a mural very symbolic of that. So having them as portrait with Shirley did a magnificent job on there. And then other themes that we wanted to run there is like the yellow and black, which is seen in the Black Lives Movement, Bruce Lee's iconic jumpsuit as yellow and black, and also literally the colors. And then the dragon was a personal request by the owner, because it's also good luck in Chinese culture. Amazingly, the next slide will show you a response by Linda Lee Cadwell, who's the widow of Bruce Lee. And in her letter, it was kind of just, speechless and heartwarming in her response, just saying that how Bruce Lee and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar try to bring communities together. And that was the idea of these murals, especially ones in the National District. That's it. I want to say thank you for having Dozfy participate in the this panel of Seattle Design Festival. I also want to thank Lisa, Kathleen Warren, her partner and overall creative, and Seth for the Downtown Seattle Association for having us. It's extremely an honor.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Also, sorry if I said your name wrong. I was copying whatever Evening Magazine said, which is Dozfy, but you're Dozfy, I think, right?
Either one works. I made up the name, so there's no correct way.
Okay. Well,
Thank you,
I
though.
love your story, and I also love that you are a medical illustrator. I did not know that, so that's really fun facts.
Thank you so much.
Okay, go feed your baby, and then we'll see you for the Q&A.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, our next presenter is Barry, right? Yes. Barry reached out. Yes. Okay. Barry reached out to me 5 years ago. We just looked it up. It's been 5 years of our email
Right.
relationship.
Sorry, Kathleen, it's not Barry.
It's
Zaeos.
Mari? It's Zaeos. Oh my God, I can see that on my screen. Okay, fine, Zaeos. Okay, starting over. So next up is Zaeos. He's a designer, but a multidisciplinary artist. I first discovered him by seeing his work around Seattle. The first one I ever saw was up at the old QFC in Greenwood. I think it's a QFC or Safeway, that had a piece on it, and I really wanted to know who he was, so I was asking around. My stalking online did not prove very fruitful. He has an elusive online presence. But once I finally got to know him, I found out about his generous spirit. He put out a call to donate a lot of Black Lives Matter murals for anyone who had a wall. He would do the art and the paint and bring his crew out. And everyone in his group was just like so generous during this time. And I've really enjoyed getting to know him as a friend, as an artist. And he's one of those people that when he says, I want to try something new, you don't even care about showing the client. You just say, sure, do it, because it's going to be good. So anyways, I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad you're part of this. And I am glad that our friendship with you and Overall Creative has come out of this terrible year. So I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And thank you to everyone else, Downtown Seattle Association and MoPOP. So really, art kind of for me is a therapeutic thing. I really enjoy doing it. It's a meditative aspect where you can sit and focus for long periods of time and really kind of heals my mind in a sense. And at the time when the businesses started boarding up, I wanted to participate. I'm always on the lookout for walls and stuff like that. So I was contacted by some friends. Linda's Cafe, or Bar and Grill, had posted that they wanted some artwork on their windows. They started to board up, and it's right in my neighborhood. So I reached out to Linda, and at the time I was doing a lot of dark florals, really kind of moody things with some illustrative backgrounds, trying to combine some realism and some illustrative work at the same time. And so I went out, did this piece here with the dark gray flower. And most of the work actually for this period, this COVID stuff, is florals. You can go to the next one. The next one was facilitated by Kathleen over at Overall Creative. And same thing, really enjoy the really dark backgrounds, kind of moodiness of these flowers, which are beautiful, but they have a kind of turbulent nature to them underneath. And combine that with some illustration work on top of it. Go to the next one. Next one was commissioned by Kathleen Skinner at CES Studios across the street. And she paid for the paint and stuff, and I donated my time. And she is very inspired by crows. It's kind of her spirit animal, if you will, and asked me to do a crow, which the name is very similar to Covids. They're a species of corvid. So lots of puns were had as I was painting that. You can go to the next one. This is just a progress shot here. You can go to the next slide. This was also by Overall Creative, and it was a collaboration between Lena, I can't say her last name. Kathleen, would you be able to help me?
I'll try. Lewinsky.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that's right.
She does these shadow ladies, which are illustrations of women usually, and they have lots of detailed kind of shadows on them. And I wanted to participate in that, so I decided to do illustrative flower with a gradient as the fill, and combine that with some of the other illustrative work I had done. And I think it really turned out great, all that on a gray background. And this is at the View in Belltown. That was a really fun piece. You can go to the next one. And this is kind of the last piece I did that was associated with the COVID shutdown, but it was after a few of the Black Lives Matter murals that we had done. So for this piece, I picked a flower called the Ebony Beauty, which kind of combined both things, speaking to the Black Lives Matter and also speaking to my love of flowers and stuff like that. You can go to the next one. So as the protests for the murder of George Floyd started to happen, I started talking to my friends, and we were thinking about how we could participate with our skills in the movement and not have it be about us. We had seen a lot of, kind of graffiti, people who had gone into the CHOP or downtown while the protests were happening, and they were kind of just writing their own name, which to me was a huge disappointment because it was using the cover of basically the plight of the people and racism and the fight against that to just get your own name up. So we really wanted to participate without having it be about us, but have it be about the message. So this was the first mural we did, and each mural we do, we kind of throw ideas out there. Somebody will kind of take the lead of design. If we've got letter guys, I've got some of the guys here, David Techner, Kevin Drake, and They Drift. We've also got Kay Sarah and Will, who participate as well as part of the math crew. You can go to the next slide. This one was right next to the George Floyd one, and it's for Breonna Taylor and Kay Sarah, They Drift, myself.
That was the first one we were all there.
Yeah, this is kind of the first one that we were all together on. You can go to the next slide. This is the biggest one we've done. This was out on Rainier. I had Taco City is the name of the business, and they had hit me up and said they wanted to participate after we had put a call out saying we were donating our time for the Black Lives Matter movement. And Kevin Drake kind of did all the design on the letters, and Kay Sarah did most of the smaller names behind it. And it was really kind of calling out a lot of the victims of police violence. You can go to the next slide. I think this is just another shot of that. Kind of give you some scale on how big that is. This was designed by They Drift, and painted the hand there. And Kay Sarah and I kind of just did some support, a little background, and some illustrative work over the top of that. You can go to the next slide. This was on the Patagonia store. There's also another slide too from another angle. And this was designed kind of in collaboration with all of us. Kevin Drake did all the letters. They Drift and I did some of the background, and everybody participated, filling in and helping pull it together. You can go to the next slide. This was a mural for Justice for Elijah Mclean. Another collaboration between all of us. Design-wise, it was kind of one of my ideas. Kevin's, amazing at letters, so we had him design the letters for the Elijah and the Justice for. We all kind of filled. Kay Sarah came in and did the Mclean, and They Drifted most of the background on that one. Go to the next slide. This is a mural that's actually gone now. It's out in White Center. We had all done a mural at this spot before last year, last summer, and It had been gone over by some other graffiti, had been kind of painted over a little bit, and we used that spot for Black Lives Matter. Will designed kind of the idea behind it. They drifted the hand. Will and Kevin did the letters, and the rest of us filled in with some background and little other touches, stuff like that. That mural's actually since been painted over by the building owners. We're not sure why, but that's what happens sometimes. You go to the next slide. This was, I'm not sure the name of the business. It's right next to Art Primo downtown. This was Kevin Drake, They Drift, and I all kind of came together. I did the leaves. They drifted the hand. Kevin did the letters. A little power to the people. You can go to the next slide. This was the last one we've done so far. This was kind of inspired by where it's located. It was at the Jupiter Bar down in Belltown. And it's a little power to the people, a little power up with some characters and some references to some of the stuff that goes on in there. And that's pretty much it. I mean, do you guys have anything you'd like to contribute about how you feel about that stuff? Or... Yeah.
Good. I mean, he hit it on the head.
That's about it for us. Still on mute.
Yeah.
It like gives me a warning to unmute. It's like I'm not, anyways. Thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for showing up to be part of it. One of the things that I was thinking about when I saw that your mural was painted over in White Center was like that the building owner painted it over, not the business owner. And like, I would love, I'm not asking you that question right now, but I would love to talk about that like in a dialogue of like the building owner maybe is white, I don't know, but it's a Vietnamese restaurant. So yeah. I don't know, it's a whole like complicated dialogue. And I think one that like, if people do have questions about the politics of public art and murals, like that's a big thing that we deal with when we're putting up work, whether it's graffiti or sanctioned, you know. So I think that's a really interesting story, and I'm sad that that went away, but thank you. Okay, next up, Barry. Okay, so I'll start this over again. Barry and I emailed 5 years ago, and actually his first mural was in the old office where Lena and I used to work in our old lives. And Barry's one of those magical people who has had like a million personas, but not because he has like multiple personalities, because he just decides who he wants to be and what he wants to be good at and just does it. And I'm saying this as a prompt for you to Google his name and TED Talk, because it will prove to you that I'm not a liar. You will not regret it. It's like the best 15 minutes of your life. So we got the pleasure of working with Barry on one of the biggest murals that we produced during this time as a collective, and was inspired by his current work, and we were so happy to give him the platform to do something that he was inspired to do, and it turned out beautifully. And so I'm excited for him to share it with you. So Barry.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank every single person that has shared work today. It's like really interesting because we're in this moment where we're stuck inside, but we're connecting in ways that we haven't previously. And on top of that, it seems like, as Kalee brought up earlier, that there is more of a cohesive moment for us to be more unified in what we're doing. So to all of you that are doing the work to keep people inspired by the artwork, the colors, and to those that are doing the work that's around social justice, putting those names out there, let's always remember that many of the names that you saw that are on there, those people still walk free that killed them, cold blood. So let's not forget that, you know, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. That being said, I'm Barry Johnson, interdisciplinary artist. I paint, draw, film, photography, performance. I just like to say that like I'm a big kid externalizing my internal monologue. So to that point about all the multiple personalities, probably am getting there. I had to talk to my therapist about that. But I'm really excited to share a couple projects I worked on. One is with Overall. That has been like a resounding name throughout this, so thank you for the opportunities you've given us. I got a chance to work on a piece in CHOP that we'll see, but I was contacted by Kathleen after the work in CHOP about this opportunity to be able to paint like this very large block long set of panels. And there was a series that I'm working in. I call myself like a no signature artist because every year I change the type of work that I do. It could be black and white one year, color one year, geometric one year, faces one year. This year I'm working all through this whole idea of the disappearing figure. I'm giving all of the murders that have happened to Black and brown people. I started working in this series where these faces just get distorted, covered up, and that's around history of people covering up Black and brown narratives to fit another party's narrative. So in response to that, I've been doing all these pieces. This piece right here is a part of a 9-part panel that has the same figure. David Rue, for any of you that know him, really amazing artist, gave me the right to paint their presence across 9 large panels, and there's these like really long flowing lines that go with it as well. I'm in school for architecture right now, so I'm like really into drawing and a lot of like symmetry again, but also want to break away from that and throw back in just the distortion piece that I'm working in. I've said way too much, so that being said, I'm going to show you a video of this piece to show you the scale of it. It's going to take a second for Lisa to pull it up. It's all good, and here we go. Yeah, so I picked that verse off of Kendrick Lamar's last project, Damn. He won a Pulitzer Prize for that project. Thank you, I appreciate that, Chris. But, you know, the reality of it is real, that at any moment, there's a possibility of me being a Black man that I could die for anything that I could be doing. And we've seen that represented through the names that have shown up through the artworks, through other artists. And if you just look at the national news, it's just name after name after name. So I felt like that was a good coupling of the two. I want to also shout out, I got an opportunity to work with 15 other amazing artists. I don't know if anyone had the opportunity to see the Black Lives Matter mural that went up in CHOP. That was a really great opportunity. We all were able to create the work in one day, which, having done so many public art projects, it's very rare that you'll see a work come together that quick. There was no plan for us to do it. We literally got the invite literally 8 hours before, and it was raining the first part of the day, and we all just showed up to do that work, and it's since got the opportunity to go around the world. And, you know, outside of the fact that the work did good, that's not the thing that matters at all. The most important thing about this is, you know, making sure that we are uplifting the people and making sure that we are in a constant fight, because that's what it is, to be able to have equality. That's, you know, whenever people often seem to conflate this whole idea of Black Lives Matter and call it a political statement, but it's not that at all. It's a human statement. It's essentially, it's just saying that, like, you know, treat my life as you would yours, and don't, you know, turn a blind eye to the things that are happening within my community. So I want to go ahead and do a quick video, if you could, Lisa, of the mural that we were able to create. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that's it. I'm really super grateful to be a part of this panel and to be able to share space with these amazing artists. And that being said, thank you again for the opportunity, and I will not take up any more of your time.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Barry. I got a note from the chat from Christopher Hampson that said the distortion of that mural was unlike anything he'd ever seen in street art, which I agree with, which is why I was excited about that whole thing. So super cool. I also think I wanted to just call this out, but I had like an interesting conversation with Barry and also the client of the mural, where when Barry presented the idea to me, I presented it as the opposite of distortion. So starting distorted and then preserving Black Lives identity. And Barry was like, no, girl, this is a one-way street. This is the way it's going. And this is the way it's going to be read. And this is the fear, this is the reality, not the hope. You know, kind of, it was an interesting conversation to have. And the way that public art can be read in so many different ways, not only the way that you're seeing it, but like the way that you're experiencing it. If it's a one-way street and you're driving by, you only see it one way. So anyways, thank you, Barry, for everything. All right, last but not least, Mari is coming up, and Mari and I worked together for years. I know her most through her community organizing, but she's an artist, but also a healer, and brings people together in a really amazing way. And we've worked on some hilarious projects together and some meaningful projects together. And she's just one of the most wonderful people that you'll ever meet. So I'm not going to take up a lot of time gushing about her because she's way more eloquent and thoughtful than I am. So I'm going to let Mari speak for herself, but just know that if you don't know her, you should. So, Mari.
Kathleen, thank you for that introduction. And thank you to all the artists who met with me sharing about this work. I'm a little nervous, y'all. I'll just acknowledge that right now. What I'm gonna share for you is some things that I've had some own internal process around. So thank you for witnessing this, and thank you for being here. So as Kathleen mentioned, my name is Mari Shibuya. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. A little bit about me and how I come to this work. I'm a lover of psychology and philosophy, so I'm kind of an artist with the heart of a social worker. I got into art thinking that I was gonna become a social worker, but instead got trapped in the mural game. Shout out to Leo, who's also on this call today. So a little bit about the identities that I bring into the space. I'm biracial. So part of me is Japanese American and another part of me is white, Caucasian, European descent. And I acknowledge that there is like this intersection of my identities that happen that allow me to have access to these opportunities, and specifically that came up in a lot of these mural creations. So that is a deeper story and one that I won't spend too much time on. I include some first slides here of, I also want to shout out my buddy VK, who is not with me here today or on this call, but is a dear friend and dear collaborator. And so any letters that you see in this, VK is responsible for. And it's a really invaluable and important part of these messages. So this first slide is, new systems will grow if we tend to them. And for me, this speaks to the role of the visual artist and the responsibility that art has had in creating and ushering in new ways of knowing and being. it is up to us as artists to be able to like lend visuals to these movements and lend visuals to these futures that we're living into. Art is like, revolution is fueled by music, it's fueled by dance, it's fueled by words, and it's fueled by the visuals that enable us to move towards that. And so if you go to the next slide, Lisa, this is, so new systems will grow if we tend to them. And this is an image of the mural after the passing of a youth that I actually got to work with at Urban Artworks named Lorenzo Anderson. He also went by Lil Mob. And so this became a memorial piece to him as in the chop. So if we talk about what those new systems are, and we talk about the chop, and we talk about this movement, for me, there's a power in seeing the new systems actually grow on top of a mural that's pointing to these new systems growing. And Lisa, if you could go to the next slide. Creativity regenerates. So our collective imagination is really what is going to get us through this. As we've spoken to in terms of how the COVID murals have provided a space of like hope and optimism, our creativity is also a part of how we come together collectively to imagine these new systems to grow into. And if you can, yeah, thanks Lisa. So as Seth mentioned at the beginning of this call, I actively pivoted. I was supposed to be doing a project with the Downtown Association on this wall, starting on the Monday after the initial uprisings in Seattle. And so I was down there at the protest that day. A friend and I drove through that evening to witness what was going on in Seattle. And in me, what came up was like, how can I contribute to this moment in history? How can I contribute to this moment in time? And what is the best use of those skills that I have? And so it was at that moment that I just started painting a mural of George Floyd that Sunday, and hit up VK later that day and was like, yo, come letter it up. And so this was our first collaboration, or it wasn't our first, but our second COVID mural collaboration. And it was in that point shortly after. And I suppose I will just pause for a moment to pull out and talk about like why memorial murals in this way, and what is like, and when we think about, because what is underneath all of this is trauma. And what we have to talk about in terms of in our own lives and in this collective movement of Black Lives Matter is to acknowledge the trauma that has been accrued intergenerationally in the Black community in terms of the violence that has been continuously perpetuated on Black and brown bodies in our country. And so for me in this moment, there was this, how can we as an artist community come together to organize and lend our skills and support to amplify these stories and these voices. And a growing edge for me is also like, what is the right that non-Black artists have to portraying these stories? And how much like privilege and assumption comes into play that I have the right to portray this in this moment in time. I invite you to go to the next slide. These are just some process shots of the painting. You can go to the next slide. For me, the mediums that I was working in for this process, perfect, we can stay there for a moment, was aerosol, spray paint, and acrylic house paint. Shortly after doing the George Floyd mural, it was around the time of Breonna Taylor's birthday. I actually began this mural on Breonna Taylor's birthday in honor of her memory and in honor of continuing to bring visibility to the call for justice. And next slide. And it was around that time that Seth and I were in dialogue, and I was like, yo, Seth, so what about Sephora? And Seth was just, he's like, yep, if you got the energy, go forth, do it. And I realized that I was a little bit aggressive and assertive in that. So I really appreciate your grace with me, Seth. And so as I was painting the George Floyd mural, the younger sister of Sean Furr walked by and said, hey, you should paint one of my brother. He is a local Seattle person. There still is a need for justice for his name. And so I hit up VK and was like, let's wrap Sephora. And so the next day, VK and I went down and began starting. VK created the central image, say their names, and then I began first on a portrait of Charlena Lyles. I invite you to the next slide, Lisa. Yeah. And so as we go through these slides, I invite you to say their names in your head as we're moving through them, and to, as Barry so eloquently spoke to in his, it's like, these are people, and this is a reality for folks who inhabit Black and brown skin in our country, to live in a sense of fear that they or their loved ones could be next in this situation. And so in the process of painting these murals downtown, I got to experience, if you could go to the next slide, Lisa, and stay here for a moment. I've got to experience all sorts of different reactions, and ones that were really to experience the unchecked hate that people have in their hearts. So this is a swastika that was tagged on top of a portrait of Manuel Ellis. When I was working on this portrait, I also had someone walk by while holding a gun, saying fuck N-words to me as I was painting it. And it was right during like June, when all of these, in the height of this uprising. And for me, it just served as a deep reminder that we all cannot truly know what it is like to, unless you've experienced that yourself, to live in that fear and to live in that anxiety of just inhabiting space. I invite you to go to the next slide. So these murals, as soon as they started going up, some family members of Charlena Lyles and of Sean Furr, some community members, and the last one is also of Manuel Ellis, who is a Tacoma case, who was killed in police custody. If you could actually go back one more, Lisa, thank you. Perfect. Oh, perfect. So the family of Charlena Lyles was having I apologize, there's a train going by, so I apologize for the volume that may be going on behind me. The family reached out and also actually had put out a call on Instagram to ask who had created this memorial mural of Charlena Lyles. In fact, there's been multiple memorial pieces of Charlena Lyles created. So another artist named Lars Bergquist also responded to that as well, saying that he had created that, and it invited me and Lars into a conversation in which he really invited me to consider what the role of putting our names on memorial pieces are, and what is also the role of artists who historically have not created artwork to commemorate lives lost to police violence and brutality, to enter into that space. And so Lars and I had some different conversations around that, and I really send gratitude to him for inviting me into that conversation, because it really invited me to reel back and check where I was creating from and where I was coming from, and what is it really to be in right relationship with this creative process. And so we can now go to the next slide. Is these last two slides are a mural that was created upon the request of a family who had lost a loved one to police violence. So this is a mural of Stone Child Chiefstick, Stoney, who was killed last year, July 3rd, by the Poulsbo police while he was holding a screwdriver. And they thought that he looked threatening. So this was created for the family and for a vigil. And so for me, it was a different thread of approaching in with that consent and that honoring of the family and the process, rather than taking this idea that I, like almost a savior complex, right? Like, I have this skill set, let me amplify your voice in this moment. And so I invite you to the last slide, in which as artists, as art always begets art, I just want to acknowledge all the photographers who captured these, and thank you in that moment. And I think that, yeah, that's for the most part it from me. This is a nuanced space, and I think one that requires us being uncomfortable and checking out where we're coming from and what we're bringing to the conversation, and being humble to learn, and also to call each other in, and to really acknowledge that, like, our liberation is wrapped up in one another. And until we really like center liberating the most oppressed people in our society, we ain't going nowhere. So I really invite us to all think of what are the different ways that we can come together as artists, as organizers, as creatives, to work towards healing. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Mari. Beautiful work, and your thoughtfulness around the meaning behind your work, I think, is a good segue into our last speaker. I've had a lot of thoughts too about like the people who are creating art that are providing representation, but yeah, so there's a lot of things to talk about. One of the biggest questions that we have had is, how do we make this art live on physically? But I think there's a deeper conversation about how do we make this movement live on. But for now, we have a lot of plywood in the city, and we have some cultural institutions, like our partners at MoPOP, who are interested in helping to preserve that. So my next, our next panelist, I guess, presenter is Amalia. She reached out to us pretty early on about what can we do to help acquire some of the art, whether it's physical art or digital archives, and stories told by people who are creating art or benefiting from art. So we've had a really in-depth conversation with her over the past few months about that. And so she's going to take 5 minutes to educate you with some slides on what they're doing. And I want also to preface that anyone who's on this panel or on this call who is an artist or knows panels or businesses that have art that might be interested in being part of MoPOP's collection, cool thing to put on your resume, to reach out to them or to reach out to us. So this is kind of an open call / education moment for that. Amalia?
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, it's been super fun talking about this, but and just, you know, we're all learning about this process as we move along, because this is new territory for everyone, and us as a museum trying to figure out how we can not only preserve the murals, you know, physically, but again, like you said, Kathleen, kind of make sure that the story keeps getting told, and that it, you know, it remains in the forefront of people's minds, and it stays important and relevant. And I just want to say thank you to all the amazing artists on the panel today. You just blow me away, and I really just incredible. And thank you to Overall Creative and Seattle Design and Downtown Seattle Association for just including MoPOP on this, because yeah, we're just kind of digging into this. So I'm Amalia. I'm actually one of the curators at MoPOP, and we're represented by a couple of my colleagues here who are also on the call. There's Katherine, our registrar, Melinda, our collections manager, and Lily, who really is in our marketing department, but really helps those community partnerships. So I'm going to be super quick about this because the artists are way more interesting than the museum. So we can get back to them in the Q&A. But just a bit about MoPOP for anybody who's not familiar. We are a museum that celebrates pop culture in all its forms. And we really believe that pop culture is a unifying force and that it really is a way for us to understand each other because it crosses all boundaries. It is relevant to all of our lives. So next slide, Lisa, thank you. So just quickly about our collection, we collect a bit of everything and always happy to have conversations with people who are interested in hearing more about us. We hold those those objects in the public trust. That is the intention of a museum. And, you know, and it is about the long-term stewardship and creating accessibility to our community. So next slide. I'm gonna this is gonna be so fast. So when we shut down, as the whole city shut down for COVID, we did think about how we were going to respond to this moment in time. And obviously with the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff, this has become even more relevant. And so what we've developed is this rapid response collecting initiative that we have undertaken, which allows us to kind of quickly collect those materials, those cultural materials. And so we're looking at collecting murals, but we're actually looking at collecting ephemera as well. And I don't know, Katherine, if you want to jump in super quick to just explain ephemera or not, because I know this is super, like, you love this stuff. So, yeah.
So in layman's terms, ephemera is basically all of the small throwaway items of your life. There are posters, handbills, tickets you pick up, stickers. Usually there's a lot of really great design that's featured in those things, but they also give you a really great sense of a moment in time. So this is going to be such an interesting year, but as so many of you guys have talked about, there's like this sense of annihilation of time. Like we're all going to forget everything in a few months that we've been feeling right now. So part of this program is going to be trying to recreate 2020 for the future. So.
Thanks, Katherine. So next slide, Lisa, please. Thank you. So we kind of touched on this, you know, why collecting murals is important to us. We really want to create a, you know, ongoing partnership with the Seattle arts community. It's really important to us. Our recent exhibition, Body of Work on tattoo culture, we did that, and we actually brought in numerous local tattoo artists to create original works for us. So this is kind of in that same vein. You know, we want to capture this moment in time, but we really want to create those connections as well and have, you know, opportunity to exhibit them in the future. So next slide. So kind of, you know, just in case anyone is interested in approaching us, the murals that we are interested in, kind of, they tie into our mission. They relate back to popular culture, which relates back to objects in our permanent collection. And, you know, certainly making direct reference to the lockdown, to COVID, to the fight for racial justice. All of those things are extremely important to document in the murals and, as Katherine was explaining, in the ephemera. So next slide. So, you know, that's always the question of like, what can we do with the murals once we have them? And as a couple of people have probably noticed, we have this sign right now outside our large LED sign outside the museum, where because the museum's closed, we still have the ability to highlight and showcase murals. So we actually worked with Lisa on this project, and Lily worked on this. And you can go by and see all the great murals that we have up, and they'll cycle through. But, you know, we want to have them so that they're available for future, you know, visitors and researchers, potentially, you know, a future exhibit, to loan them to other organizations who might be interested in, you know, these, you know, the artist's work, and really creating, you know, educational resources about this year, which has been pretty intense and crazy. So I think that was my last slide. So I tried to be really fast. Perfect.
Thank you, Amalia. I'm excited to drive by and look at all of the murals, but I also just want to encourage everyone who has questions about acquisition. I had a lot of questions when we first started talking about it. I'm even on a board of the museum and don't even know what it takes to acquire something. Like, what is there a tax write-off, or what do you get your name on a plaque, or what happens? So like, feel free to reach out to myself or to Amalia. I'll put you in touch about what it means to, you know, put one of your murals up for grabs for this, or to display it at the museum. So we are into the Q&A part of this. And so far I have one question, which is a few parts. So can every artist hear me that's on? So yes, I hope so. I'm going to ask the question and then we'll go in order of presentation. So that would be Kalee, you would be the first to answer, but if you want to come on and just say pass, that's also fine. The question is, how has creating these murals while contributing to these two crucial moments in our history, COVID and Black Lives Matter, allow you to reassess or assess yourself and your work? Have these memorial murals encouraged further examination of your present and past work in relation to privilege? So Kalee, I'll start with you, and if you want to pass, that's fine.
Yeah, that was quite the question. Personally, for me, I mean, this is my first time doing this work. And yeah, absolutely, it's given me a huge opportunity, especially I'm kicking myself right now because one of my murals got really, like, the one with the panels in it got really brilliant graffiti written on it. And just, sorry, I'm gonna explain it a little bit, but it's like one big panel where this person's like picking a flower and falling backwards and things are changing. And then the last 4 panels is kind of like this execution and this like final like change. But as on the person that's picking the flower, someone had graffitied, I hope a cop doesn't kill me. And for me, and the first time I saw it, it was during a protest, and it was like this moment where a lot of my art is like about like this like positivity or like moment of like self-awareness or like self-actualization and just that kind of world. And it was the first moment I was like, it really put me in my place of being like, of recognizing how lucky a person can be to just get to the point of like, you know, pondering like questions about life and like being able to not have to fight every moment for just the ability to exist safely. Yeah, so that, I mean, yeah, it's absolutely, it's, for me, it hasn't changed my work per se. I'm not an artist who does portraiture, like life very well, like real life drawings, but for sure it has made me recognize like just my privilege and being able to like be in like this positive space or like this space where like I just want everyone to feel good, and recognize that like not everyone has that privilege to even feel safe enough to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, are you back?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if
you
you're
hear me?
still or not. Okay. Yeah.
No worries. It's So to answer that question, to the crucial moments in history of COVID and Black Lives Matter, how has it changed? It's the process. I always, and my team does a great job, and I have to admit, I'm lucky to have 3 amazing women on the team that tell me how they interpret the work, and that reflects on the audience that I'm trying to keep in mind. So those 2 movements have been a huge part of that, especially since menu art was kind of geared towards the restaurant industry. The board murals is really to the public and that neighborhood. And then to answer a question about memorial murals, for further examination of your present, past work in relation to privilege, yes. The tricky part where I view is privilege is sometimes you're unaware of it. And so having conversations and using the art as a vehicle or a platform to create conversations, like the Tai Tung Chinese mural, understand with the business owner, a Chinese American in Seattle, the years of what he'd been through, and understanding his fear but hope, and creating a mural that you can meet halfway so that there is some type of win-win situation. That as that's an example of that.
So I'm guessing I'll go next to answer that question. Kathleen, I think you're muted. That's a.
I'm here. I'm getting muted because there's feedback, so I can't. I'm not controlling my own mute.
Oh.
I'm not insane. I promise. Anyways, your turn, Zaeos.
So for me, the biggest thing for the COVID murals was the response from the community while painting. Just how people say, you know, how comforting it was to see something transform from desolate and abandoned looking to a thing of beauty. So that was the biggest thing for the COVID stuff. For the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a lot of discussions between all of us every time we do a mural, and a lot of exploring what our role should be as mostly white people, and how we can participate without promoting ourselves. And I know these guys have all had thoughts about that stuff too. So it's been an enlightening experience, I think, for myself, and I'm guessing for everyone else too, on how to do that. So haven't really landed on the answer, I don't think, but we're trying our best. So.
Awesome. I feel like I relate to that. Barry, if you want to, you kind of did not do the COVID stuff, but both of yours are Black Lives Matter themed, but would love to hear about your answer as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this has always been my work since I was creating art, because this is my life. You know, this is who I am. I am very fortunate to be able to go out and be able to have the opportunity to be able to create these works. I just am very big on making sure that people understand that, like, it's not a trend. You know, it's not something that we want to go away, and it's not anything that is just of the moment, you know, because again, this has essentially been happening since 1862. So it's one of those things that we need to continue to live in this moment. And in terms of who's doing the work, as a person that, you know, cross collaborates with a lot of artists, I think the biggest thing is just like the intention behind it. There's nothing more gross feeling to me than someone that's like, oh yeah, like I just want to jump on that BLM trend. It's not a trend. You're talking about people that have died. Like there's nothing trendy about that. So I think, you know, to everyone that has done the work and is having a moment of reflection, wondering what their next step is, their space is, no, you are invited to do this. You're invited to do this. It's not like something that, you know, is a hard step into, because realistically, you're talking about human lives. So long that there is no, we're essentially tokenizing death and we're capturing a statement and just finding a way to plaster that everywhere, you're doing the right work. Just make sure that, you know, your intention is of that is a very clear and pure one that we've said so many times. And that's just about equality in human life preservation. That's it. Like that to me is, you know, so you know, that's just always been a part of my life. And I always, you know, for our new advocates that are wanting to become supporters, that can go to allies, that I've heard this new word of co-conspirators, because it's like, if we're gonna really create change, everyone needs to be able to do this as a unit. And if we get arrested, everyone needs to get arrested collectively. You know what I mean? It's like the whole quote of injustice against one is injustice against all. So it's one of those things that, like, it's going to take a bigger movement than just Black people and brown people to be able to do this, you know, specifically Black, because we only make up 14% of the nation. We need assistance, we need allies, we need supporters. So to those that are interested in getting involved, you know, do the natural thing, start a conversation, you know what I mean? And like, there's always so many beautiful, beautiful learnings that come out of a just genuine conversation. You know, thank you so much, Kathleen, for sharing that. The experience about like where we want to do the mural at, where you want to start at the reverse, because I was like, okay, like I appreciate that point, but you know, think about this as well. And you were super receptive to that. And that's realistically, that's what we need. It's just, you know, space, time to be able to share with people, and this whole need to want to build together. Thank you.
I just want to say, so I think the question, thank you, Barry. I think the question was definitely geared more towards like white privilege. And I love hearing your response in regards to that of, it's not a trend. Like everyone's on their high horse right now and exhausting Black artists. I know that I've reached out to lots of people who are just like, I cannot, like, I'm so tired right now. Like everyone thinks it's super cool to engage us right now. Like, I hope it continues. And I think that question was definitely geared towards white privilege. And I think that you did a great job of like reversing the question and answering it in a way that like, that needs to be addressed. So I think a perfect segue is Mari, who is not Black and not white and has kind of this like between emotion about all of it and her place in it. And I am excited to hear from you, Mari. And then once you wrap up, we'll go on to the next question, but do your thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry, and for everyone who answered, laid down knowledge thus far. I resonate in different ways with everyone's share. I think what comes up for me specifically is this. I've done a lot of work with my own relationship to ancestry and with the Japanese American population. And when we talk about Asian Americans and what the model minority stereotype is, right? Like model minority is this push towards assimilation. And there's like a lot of trend is not the right word, but a lot of conversation right now in the Asian American community around where anti-Blackness emerges as a result of this gravity of assimilation. So yeah, there was the huge for me, like examining, like as I shared in my presentation, examining the amount of privilege that I had in that space to be on the streets of Seattle at night with a certain amount of safety in painting these murals, and to examine all of the layers of nuance that go into that. And I think like, I resonate with Kalee, your initial share in examining the amount of privilege that one has to have to examine the nuance of like the nature of reality, right? Like there has to be a certain amount of our hierarchy of needs to get to that abstracted place. And I think that for me, when I like really reassess myself and my work, I think there's also a culture of silence within the Asian American community that I have found myself grappling with in my own ancestors' silence around oppressions that have happened to them, and to contend with the threads of the rage that I feel in my body and what stops me from speaking out to the sense of injustice around me. And so I think in terms of how I examine my present and past work in relation to privilege, like what I emerge with is this conclusion that, as I mentioned, it's like our liberation is all tied up in one another, and it's gonna take us who have benefited from privilege within the system to refuse to continue to unconsciously, complicitly receive that benefit, and to continue to advocate for that redistribution, for what reparations look like, and for how do we facilitate transformation. I conclude my response.
Can I say one thing?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Being the COVID muralist, privilege is also outside of that. It's like with the COVID situation, I'm married to a physician who works at Seattle Children's, and seeing the education about the spread of COVID and stuff like that is a privilege in itself, of knowing how to approach it, how to do that. And then how the media had many different sides to it. I think that's another component of like unawareness of privilege, because it goes beyond what we can conceive in our own world, and then what happens in the outside world and how those interplay. I think that the privilege talk is very, very layered. And I just want to say that because when I was making murals, I purposely put a barrier around me and told my staff, hey, you can't help out. It's going to be only me, because I don't want to risk it.
We live in a very layered situation right now, for sure. And I think the privileged talk can go across everything that's happening in the world, but thank you for that insight. I have a different question, kind of pivot, more about, I don't know, principle than, I guess, privilege. Does it matter who you're painting for, like who commissions it? Is something beautiful paid for by Bank of America as valuable or as an uncomfortable reality painted illegally on the side of the same bank? Does this message depend on the messenger? We'll go in the same order. Start with Kalee.
Personally, for me, I did murals all by myself, no crew, and got paid for the last one that I did, and was super grateful to get supplies for the other one, for quite a few of them. And I think it's, for me personally as the artist, like it's about the message, and I would personally do it for free, for fun, you know. So, and about, for me, it's in a selfish way, a healing process for myself, and for me that's like completely priceless. Getting money for it is like an added bonus, of course, and like wanting to like not be a starving artist, if you will. Yeah. But
the undertone there is, do you care who pays for it? If it's like a giant corporation, evil monster.
Yeah. Man, that hasn't.
You haven't been there yet. It's okay if you haven't processed.
It hasn't happened to me yet. Would I take the money? Yes. If it's from a corporation that has a bunch of money and they should be giving it to artists, like I think about, I don't know this person personally, but I read their experience about having a like artist, wow, not internship.
Residency.
Thank you. Or yeah, residency through Amazon, and their experience about it. And, you know, I think, and just hearing about what they were saying about it, like as artists, I think it can kind of hurt us to like take money from corporations that we don't know like what else they're fueling. But I think like if they're going to give us money, take the money and use it to help yourself and help your community and
yeah, share that with everyone.
All right.
So I don't know, it hasn't happened to me, so I guess that's not a great response, but.
Well, we will find out, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll find
You're on the up and up. All right, Patrick, Dozfy.
Can you just repeat the question so I make sure I answer it?
It's basically, does who you are and from whom you're being commissioned to paint matter? If something beautiful is paid for by Bank of America, is it as valuable as an uncomfortable reality painted illegally on the side of the same bank? Does the message depend on the messenger? So basically, like, does it change the depth of your art if someone's paying for it, maybe that you don't believe in? I think that's what I'm reading it as.
Okay. Oh, man. There's no right answer, in my opinion, this. My mentor, who's a Black international artist who paints in blackface, told me there's 3 things you have to consider when you ever put art out there. The art, the artist, and then the audience. He asked me which one's the most important to make a living. And I go, the art. And he goes, no, it's the audience. So to answer that question, I think if you, as an artist, you always want to go by your principles. And I am in fully support of that. And I personally have been there. Someone who has been offered by Trump to paint something at his hotel, it's before he got elected, was already hard enough. And to this day, I'm still very glad I said no, adamantly. So as an artist, I would say the beauty of making art is creating something from your own personal creation and having a personal message, and then the ability to grow from that is the beauty of that. Sacrificing that, no money can pay that off. That's my opinion.
So I'll go next. I think for me, it depends definitely on who is paying for it, but I think more importantly, it depends on if my vision is going to be compromised at all. So if the person paying for it is going to tell me what I have to paint, or, you know, say that I can't paint a certain thing that I would like to paint, that would make a difference, because if I'm trying to make a stand or a point, and, you know, compromising my own morals wouldn't happen for money. So to me, it really depends on how much influence the company would have over something like that. So, because if Trump paid me and I got to paint a Black Lives Matter mural or something like that, I'd probably just take that money and donate it to BLM anyways. So win-win.
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. So, you know, we've all talked about like who's paying it. I mean, realistically, like a lot of money when it comes to these large organizations can get dirty. I think, you know, you brought up a really great point about like the character and like the person that's behind it. So if, you know, someone that is like anti-Black and anti-race entirely was asking me to do some work, then like, no, that's not gonna work no matter, you know, I wouldn't compromise my morals there. But if it comes to like an organization that, you know, is offering me money, but in the same sense, like has a bit of a like, not like in the forefront, like really bad things that's happened, but I think that with a lot of organizations, they can end up getting messed up and stuff. Amazon's a great example, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. I mean, for the most part, people are putting their money in there already. I mean, think about college institutions, right? They're built by slaves. So what, you all not go to those colleges now? So it's really, you really got to think about ultimately, I think it was brought up, the point about the audience and the persons behind it. Because what ends up happening is if we're not given a seat at the tables, then we will forever be in a position where we're screaming about change and how to affect change and how to, and what needs to be done without being given the opportunity to do it. It's just whenever you're inside the organization, or once you start to have those conversations with whoever you're doing the work for, if it doesn't align with your morals entirely, it's just good to peace out on it. But definitely when it comes to money, one of those things, I wouldn't consider it like a super big, hard decision. It's like, if it's not a good feel, don't rock with it. But definitely, I mean, when it comes to money and like a lot of long establishments that have been here forever, they've all to some degree done something fucked up. So it's kind of picking, you know, who you choose to go to the dance with.
And
Mari, you're up.
I really appreciate Barry, which is like, it's who you choose to go to the dance with. Yeah, right? It's funny because, so Seth, one of the first opportunities that Seth presented me with for downtown was for McDonald's. And I like had this moment of being like, whoa, like, just like very, very torn about it. And ultimately, even though it's like, so for me, I guess what comes up is like the amount of design constraints that the corporation is putting on your creativity, right? To connect back with like this idea of the audience and who we're creating for. I definitely resonate with that. And this question of, as creatives, we do need some form of income and capital to continue to fuel us doing work in the world and to continue to fuel us getting our basic needs met to contribute. So I feel like that it is, for me, I found it to be a very case by case basis, typically slanting in the turning away from larger corporate people. So I also haven't had a lot of experience relating to that. So I can't really like speak authentically to those decisions that I've made in the past. That really, I think, comes back to like, why are you doing it and who are you doing it for? Very much so.
Okay, hi. Sorry, my computer crapped out on me, but I can't see the next question. Was there anything after that last question? If anyone sees it. I also just wanted to say that I think that everything that you said is obviously amazing and on point. That's why we love you guys and work with you. But it's a challenge that all of us have, even as facilitators, when we're passing jobs along to you. And I hope that that all artists will always feel comfortable to express those concerns and say, you know, this client that you're asking me to work for doesn't align with my beliefs. Even if you align with, you know, the facilitator's beliefs, it's okay to say no to those things and to stand up for that and to explain yourself and to say, I really want a paid job, but not this job. And I'd love to have those conversations with you, as I know everyone else would. So I really admire all of you who really like think deeply about this, because it also will help facilitators think deeply about the jobs that we pawn off on you. You know, I think that it's a community that we need to consider in all of that we're investing in. So I really admire all of you for having those thoughts. Was there another question, or should we wrap it up? I have a million questions, but I have all of your cell phone numbers.
There was a question from Christina. I can answer it if you want, or if you want.
That'd be great. I somehow can't see it anymore. So if you could read it.
Sure. The question is, what kind of attribution will there be back to the artist when projecting the murals on MoPOP's large displays at street level? Things like at tags are easily seen. Will they be seen on the large displays?
That's for Amalia, I think. Is she still here?
I'm here. Yeah, it looks like Annalie actually answered that. But yeah, it's a projection that was put together by Seattle Design Festival, and so it includes all the names of the artists and also the physical location of the murals, so that you can see them in person if you want. So yeah, pretty cool. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so. Well, I know maybe I'll let Lisa do an actual wrap up, but I just wanted to thank all of you so much for your time. I learned some new things and just love you guys so much. Thanks for all your contributions to the city. And thanks for Seattle Design Festival and MoPOP for partnering.
Yes, just to echo that, sorry, I just saw the chat. Yes, thank you everyone. Thank you for the panel today. Thank you, Kathleen, Seth, all the artists, MoPOP. You've all been amazing. Please go and check out MoPOP. We will be projecting some of the artist murals and more mural artists that haven't joined us today. Their artwork will be shown at MoPOP from today until Sunday. And you can also take a self-guided tour on Stronghold Seattle. Thank you all again for joining us today. This was a very good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And if everyone participating could just stick around for a second.
But at least it's spring. It'll take you all of a half hour.
Sorry, we'll give everyone a minute.
Patrick, is there any chance we can see some baby pictures?
Oh. Oh, let me see. Oh, sorry. Literally, I've been like running on like 4 hours of sleep the past 2 days.
Oh,
So let me see if I can upload on my background. How's that? Because
okay.
yeah, it's been an exciting journey. So.
Seth, do you think we could stop the recording?
Yep.
Awesome.